Nickelodeon has created some of the best cartoons that form the foundation of millions of childhoods, and one of the most memorable and culturally historic eras in the network's history is, of course, the 90s. And being huge fans of that era of Nicktoons, it got us thinking, what were the greatest Nicktoons to come out of that decade? And for that matter, what were the worst? In all honesty, it was such a strong time for Nickelodeon that there really weren't that many duds, but in our opinion, there are a few that stand out as not living up to the quality of the time.
How can you say those horrible things?
And perhaps the bigger decision is figuring out which of the shows were the best. After all, this is the decade that gave us Rugrats, Rocko's Modern Life, Doug, Ren and Stimpy, Hey Arnold, and Our Real Monsters. Hey, what's up? This is Brad with Wicked Binge, and today we're counting down the top 3 best and worst 90s Nicktoons. We know it's a controversial subject, so let us know in the comments section if you agree with our picks. Play nice. The worst. Number 3. The Wild Thornberrys. To kick off our worst list, we picked a show which might surprise you. That's if you remember it, of course. We're talking about The Wild Thornberrys, a show which, sorry to say, is a bit forgetful.
Frightfully disappointing, that.
Now, granted, this show definitely has its share of fans. For example, Common Sense Media was generous enough to give the show a 5-star rating, arguing that the show inspired young people to be more sensitive towards animal protection, and also to be more accepting of other cultures. However, others haven't been so kind.
A baby bushbuck!
While the show does offer relevant, thought-provoking ideas which can have a positive impact on young kids' minds, honestly, this show just doesn't meet the grade of other shows released during its time.
Smashing!
Ever since it came out, critics felt there was something seriously lacking about it. For quite a few people, the whole animal-loving theme wasn't strong enough to center an entire series around. Others feel that the cartoon lacks what many other cartoons usually prioritize: comedy. The Wild Thornberrys was a little too serious at times, and didn't focus as heavily on making audiences laugh. Perhaps this is why the show has scored so lowly. It was just too serious of a show to air for such a young audience. That said, other cartoons have done this incredibly effectively, so maybe the stars just didn't align for the Wild Thornberrys.
Eliza, I'm warning you, if you so much as take one step outside this camp area, I'll send you back to live in the States.
Number 2. Catdog. What if we had a cat and a dog? Let me finish. And we put them together. I mean, I guess that's, something? I think the biggest problem with this show is that it kind of lacked creativity. Admittedly, most 90s Nicktoons were watchable, so Catdog wasn't the worst thing ever, but at least with a show like The Wild Thornberrys, there was a pretty elaborate story with unique characters. A lot of thought went into it, and it was more than unique. Catdog really just seems like something an executive thought up last minute because they needed a new show. Reminds me of school.
What in the ta-da is that?
It also lacked the heart that a lot of other Nicktoons of the era had. Rugrats and Doug, for instance, had a lot of relatable moments, and even shows that were less about any sort of profound emotional or character development, such as Rocko's Modern Life, really nailed the comedy and goofiness. Obviously, cartoons don't need to be about lessons or preachiness. That's what made Ren and Stimpy so hilarious. The creators didn't like the idea that cartoons had to instill values into children. In their eyes, they were better served providing goofiness and entertainment. But even if Catdog shared the same approach, the comedy just wasn't on the same level, and thus, it was really kinda just forgettable. Number 1. The Brothers Flub. We'd like to apologize in advance if you're a fan of the Brothers Flub, but we regret to inform you that this show has occupied the first place in our countdown of worst 90s Nicktoons. Our condolences for you taking this loss. Honestly, out of the shows which aired on Nickelodeon in the 90s, the Brothers Flub was a complete flub. Ha, get it? Which many 90s kids try to erase from their memory when recalling their childhood, whether they had liked to admit it or not. This show has been criticized on all sides. On one hand, the character design and development is extremely poor, something which some critics feel as if the producer should have invested more in, especially considering that the storyline had potential. After all, with 2 alien brothers traveling in outer space, there's a lot of character development that could happen.
My stomach can't take the combined pain of lost casserole and a life of listening to your moronic dribble!
Then, apart from the vapid nature of the characters' personalities, they lack charm. Yes, they're very hyper-energetic characters, however, the manner in which they are portrayed makes them come across as irritating as opposed to intriguing.
Into the jaws of doom we charge!
To make matters worse, the plots for most of the episodes were predictable. If a plot is predictable, you can be sure that your audience will not be engaged. All in all, it was an extremely forgettable show which Nickelodeon likely won't be releasing on Blu-ray anytime soon. Alright, enough with mediocrity. Let's go on to the best shows. Okay, before we do move on, we want to make a quick note. We are aware that SpongeBob SquarePants technically came out in 1999. But, that said, given the long run of the show, 12 seasons, we're making a judgment call. It's a 2000 show.
I think I'm gonna be sick.
So, despite it being one of my personal favorite cartoons, we're not including it. And yes, shows like Catdog, which originated in 1998, cut it close too. But given its lifespan was far smaller, a sizable chunk of it was released in the 90s, unlike SpongeBob. Let us know if we should do a best and worst 2000s Nicktoons video.
Mr. Mime, you have the right to remain silent.
Alright, with all that cleared up, let's look at the best of the 90s Nicktoons. Number 3. Rugrats. If you're a 90s kid, the name of this cartoon will always bring back those nostalgic cartoon memories of sitting in front of the television, absorbed in the moment, enjoying the show. It's undoubtedly one of the most quintessential cartoon shows of the 90s. Why was this show so epic? It was about babies! Well, first things first, it appealed to a wide audience. I know it may sound strange that a cartoon series about toddlers going on adventures could appeal to anyone but children, but in all honesty, it does.
This is the bestest place, you guys!
The show is best described as a family show with great, intriguing, and well-developed plots for most of the episodes. The toddlers' adventures were crafted well enough to pull in even older kids while not boring parents. After all, the show focused on the parents as a B-plot, and their banter, problems, and conversations were often relatable to parents at home.
It's Mommy's turn to play in the mud.
It offered a lot to kids. It wasn't too serious of a show, but was also willing to navigate complex, sensitive issues such as the loss of a mother with incredible finesse and delicacy. It wasn't too sentimental and raw for a child to assimilate the message negatively, but was done so well that a kid would value his or her mother even more.
I'm just afraid he'll miss her.
Then you can miss her together.
Whether you're a fan of the show or not, it's undeniable that Rugrats was a well-developed show which is a cornerstone of the 90s childhood experience. Its popularity secures its position as the third longest-running cartoon series in Nickelodeon history, and also a gem in the hearts of 90s kids. Number 2. Doug. Honestly, out of all the cartoon shows which have aired on Nickelodeon, one which truly encapsulates the joy and essence of being a teenager is Doug. While it lasted only 4 seasons, this show gave us some of the best episodes ever seen in a cartoon series in the 90s. This show is ranked so highly for multiple reasons. Firstly, the content of the show was so relevant for kids and budding adolescents.
Mayonnaise? Patty mayonnaise.
Any show which follows the struggles of a teenager at school battling with self-esteem issues, bullying, and acceptance is a show which is a relevant plot for teenagers throughout the world.
Of course!
So often, adolescents struggle with insecurities at school without any outlet. Realizing that there is someone who's like them gives them the comfort of knowing that they aren't alone in the world. What's more, a lot of the message and morals transmitted in the show, namely concerning confidence, will encourage others who are unhappy with themselves to love themselves.
I think that deep down inside, you're a good kid.
What's more, thanks to the nature of the show's storyline, Doug also features incredibly dense character development. Viewers feel connected to Doug and his story because they understand him. What's more, his daydreams of becoming a superhero are an interesting outlet his character uses to get through his problems. Something that, although seems goofy, is actually relatable to many kids. In comparison to a television show like The Wild Thornberrys, which also handles dense themes and heavy subject matter, producers were able to manage the relevance of teenage issues with the informality and charm of Doug's character. Doug is one of the best 90s Nicktoons that really represented the early era of Nickelodeon. Number 1. Hey Arnold. Topping our list of the best 90s Nicktoons is none other than the brainchild of animator Craig Bartlett, Hey Arnold. The show focused on a 10-year-old football-headed city kid named Arnold.
Yeah.
Here's why this show has topped our countdown. Perhaps one of the best facets of this show was the amount of detail and development given to all the characters. In terms of development, we definitely get an in-depth look at all sorts of real-life issues. For example, viewers get a detailed backstory of Helga, which describes her traumatic childhood experience and feelings of neglect at the hands of her parents. Because of this backstory, it helps the viewer understand why she is the person she is today.
You said that no one at home notices that you exist.
And?
Well, I think that's very sad, Helga.
The intertwining stories showcase bullying, poverty, loneliness, depression, loss, and dozens of other mature themes.
You've taught me that some people can be trusted.
There are very few kids shows that explore important issues to this degree, and more often than not, it easily blends the seriousness with comedy. For example, in the Veterans Day episode, Arnold and his best friend Gerald learn to respect the veterans and their family for their military service. An important message delivered when Arnold's grandpa tells him the story in which he gave Hitler a wedgie. Another important factor which makes the show so great is that Arnold is such a likable guy. He spends his free time helping others solve their problems. He's such a giving person, so much so that when he finds himself in trouble, it's sad.
You're supposed to use 2 hands. Now take your time, concentrate, then swing.
His character is so pleasant and appeals to our sensitivity, causing us to develop an emotional bond and interest in his development. Hey Arnold is the perfect 90s Nicktoon. It's funny, entertaining, and explores mature themes. It's a cartoon that didn't treat kids like they were idiots and wasn't afraid to tackle serious themes without sacrificing the jokes. Also, the character designs and animation style are very unique. For better or worse, these shows will always have a place in our 90s memories. We'd love for you to share your thoughts on what you feel are the best and worst Nicktoons of that era. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. But most importantly, stay wicked.